This is Insight. Phone lines are open. Dial 384-2191.
Sure, we can take your calls today here on WDLB's Insight program. It is already the first Friday in the month of November, and joining me in studio representing the city of Marshfield is the City Administrator Steve Barg. Good morning once again.
Good morning, Jeff. Good to be here.
Getting to be that time of the year here. Leaf pickup underway, getting ready for snow plowing and all of that business that comes around with fall.
Very true, but if you'd have told me last time we got together in early October that it would still be up near 60, which I guess the next couple of days might be, I would have been very thankful, and it looks like that's what we might have.
I remember a time, and it wasn't that, it doesn't seem like years go by fast. It might have been 8-10 years ago when I was painting outside on my house. It was 60 plus degrees on Thanksgiving.
You know, this time of year can be almost anything, truthfully, from even heavy snow to temperatures sometimes even approaching 70, and I guess maybe that's why people enjoy Wisconsin. It's got a variety of weather.
It sure does. And people, yeah, they make that. I like the 4 seasons. I said, well, 3 of them. One you can keep. The one where I can't feel my fingers.
Well, I know. True. Very true. And when I lived in Minnesota back in the early 90s, we had what we called the Halloween blizzard. And I'm not sure how much it affected central Wisconsin, but it's still, I think, one of the highest snow totals that the Twin Cities has ever had. And, and that was on the 30th and 31st, or 31st and maybe November 1st. But you just don't normally think of getting, I think it was 28 inches of snow or something during that time of year.
As we're talking now here, if you're listening to us in the first weekend in November, we would normally have 4/10 in the rain gauge. Or no, yeah, 4/10. We don't even have but a trace thus far. So it's not a real rainy type of month this November.
Yeah, it's been kind of dry. Did you hear what anybody's forecasting for the winter? I guess I haven't heard.
Colder and wetter. Now, what does wetter mean? I don't know. They didn't say snow. Notice they didn't say snow. They just said wetter. Well, what does that mean?
But when you put it together with colder, it gives you an idea, doesn't it?
It's like, yeah, exactly. So you can do your math from there, I guess. Huh? Well, talking about that, your budgets are something that I've often wondered how. I know you guys are exact. You don't like to use the term slush fund, but you got to have a little contingency or whatever built in from time to time in order to not know what the weather's going to do.
Yeah, we do, and we oftentimes don't use it. The weather is a big thing. We've had snow plowing budgets that have gone from well under budget to way over budget, and it's really hard to tell. Are you going to get one serious snowstorm, 5, 7? It's hard to forecast, and so you just take your best shot. But you do put some money in contingency, and we'll talk more about contingency here in a second as we review where we're at with the 2022 budget.
How are we doing? I mean, we were in a bind here with some accounting inaccuracies a few years ago, or practices, you might say. No money missing or anything like that, just a way of doing business that might not have been the best as far as the CPAs were concerned.
Well, yeah, maybe before we talk about the budget, we can talk about the audit. Usually we get the audit in May or June, but because of some things we were going through, it took a little bit longer. But a company we call CLA did the audit report in October, and it was very positive for 2020. Actually, considering all that we had to go through and those legal costs that we had with the various cases that you and I have talked about before, they really rang up a tab. But despite that, we actually came out slightly to the good. And that's pretty amazing, all things considered. And also, they're very pleased with the progress we're making in terms of, funding our debt better and getting out of the structural budget deficit. So it's a climb. I'll be honest with you. We're really in year 3 now, going forward, of maybe a 5-year program to get back to where we ought to be. But we're taking the right strides, and it's looking a lot better than it was, say 2 years ago.
So this sounds like a silly question on the surface. Why an audit? Are you trying to, is that a practice that's common in order to keep with public funds that everybody's on the up and up, or is there something that you're thinking you're not seeing or doing, or you just want another set of eyes, or why do you do that? No,
we are required to do an annual financial audit, and it's part of, well, we need it for a variety of reasons, but then the rating agencies use it for when we go out to borrow money. They look at where we stand in terms of our finances, and others who depend on our finances to make decisions about a variety of things, they look at that too. Where did you end 2020? What did things look like on December 31st of 2020? And that's what we have a good foundation building forward. And again, it still shows some needs, but it does show a lot of improvement in the past 24 months.
So what is our rating now? I mean, it probably, we've talked about this before, or at least it came up in the news a couple times that it might have taken a dent.
It did. It did a couple of years ago, and we're holding our own now. Actually, they gave us not only one step down, but they called it one step down with a negative outlook at one point, suggesting that the next step might more likely be more down than up, another step. And we're still there, actually. We're at what they call an A1 negative outlook. Now, if somebody said your bonds were A1, I mean, if I said A1 to you, what would you think? Do you think
about as high as you can get?
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that, Jeff. The next step up, we want to get back to where we were, is AA3, which is actually better because it's AA, I imagine. And we're hopeful that in the next 2 to 3 years we can get there. That's where we were until 2018. And but they look at the numbers. They look at where are we at with our fund balance. That's kind of like our savings account. Where are we at with our debt load? A variety of things to determine whether or not we deserve that step back up. They're pleased with what we're making for progress, but they don't see yet that we should be raised back to AA3.
Is that just a fun thing to do, or is that really, I mean, are we going to be borrowing that much as a city that it's going to affect us in the near future?
Well, at the very least, we do an annual borrowing in the spring for capital projects like street improvements. We typically borrow around $4 million a year for major street work, largely. And when we do, we have to go to Moody's. And Moody's walks through all these questions with us, and it's a long list of questions. Most of it financial, some of it economic development, is your community growing the tax base or what's happening there. But they evaluate all these statistics, and they decide whether or not we keep the same rating or go up. And the next question is, well, who cares, right? So we're A1 or AA3. What does it really matter in real terms? It affects two things. It affects our interest rate, and it also affects the number of people interested in buying our bonds. If you have very few people interested in buying our bonds, the terms we're going to get are not as good. We're going to pay a lot more interest on those bonds as we repay them than we would if we had a lot of bidders who are competitive because they see us as a good risk.
Talking with Steve Barg, City Administrator. You can too here this first Friday in November, 384-2192, live on WDLB. Coming to you also in video on MFLD TV. Look for them on the city's website or on their Facebook page as well as a YouTube page. And you can see this as at your leisure here and the fine palatial studios that we're in here of WDLB. The borrowing and the budget, that kind of thing, I guess we try to make it with how we would do it. I mean, all we have to draw from for experience is our own budgets and home budgets. But there are different things, different colors of money, I was told at one time. You can only use certain things for certain amounts when you're getting grants and funding, and the state gives you tax rebates or whatever you want to call it here, funding, state funding. There's only certain things. So sometimes you wish that you could just do what you wanted to do and get that off of the plate, so to speak, on things that you want to do. But there is times when you're unable to do that.
Yeah, and without getting too deep into it, the whole TIF thing is hard for people to understand. But what we were doing for a number of years, Jeff, is the monies that our TIF districts were collecting in excess of their expected debt payments were going into a debt service fund, and we were using some of those monies to offset budget deficits, as we prepared the annual budget. We supplemented with some of those funds, which we believed we were able to do. And again, it would be a long explanation, but that was not a good practice. We've corrected it now. We've made amends, and we're sort of healing from that, if you will. And as a result, there's an annual hole in the budget that we didn't have in the past. And we've done a combination of cutting expenses. We cut expenses a lot last year. We actually passed a budget last year for 2021 where expenses went down from one year to the next. When does that ever happen? I mean, there's always inflation. There's always contract salary increases and stuff, but we still got below the number from the previous year. And so a combination of that and some tax increases to get more commensurate with where we're supposed to be. Our tax rate now is right about where Point is, Stevens Point, and it's below Wisconsin Rapids, but we're back to maybe more reasonably funding what we provide in terms of services. So it's been hard, it's been kind of ugly in a sense, but we've gotten to a much better place.
How long do you think this whole, or as you see it, this catch-up is going to take here from what we originally were behind when we try to get out from, or correct this method of spending?
Well, I think the whole thing, we may have said this before. I'm not sure if we knew exactly what we were saying at the time. It was a guesstimate. But the whole thing is roughly a 5-year process, and we're now going into year 3. So picture yourself, if you and I had this conversation in the fall of 2024, I would think we would be at the point where we could say we're back to where we belong and feel more confident about the future budgets.
You can see the light, as they say, huh? At the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, it's there. I mean, if you picture, and I always come back to home finances. You know, if you and your spouse got in a bind for some things, I mean, you wouldn't get out of it in 1 year necessarily, but with a plan and taking care of some of your debt issues and maybe working with somebody who had some professional experience like we have, we do the same thing with a professional financial advisor. You know, in 4 or 5 years, you start to get back to a place where you're more comfortable and more secure.
Talking with City Administrator Steve Barg on today's Insight program about what a few years ago he said it was a big news story and a big shock, a big pain, something we had to look forward to there. When you talk about saving money and being under budget, I keep thinking somebody's paying because they're not getting something, either raises or equipment or something has to be put on hold a little bit longer and make it work a little bit more, 1 more year, make that last before we go into something else. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's a combination of both. You know, since we don't make a product, our employees really are where the budget goes. I mean, it's the police officer on the street, it's the building inspector coming out to inspect a property, all those kind of things. So employee salaries, you know, did not keep up as well as they should have during those years, and we're trying to make amends and trying to work toward that now. And you're right, there were some purchases and expenses that were put off because, you know, the dollars weren't there. We try to get more out of the vehicles, we try to get more out of the equipment. And just because a piece of equipment is supposedly has a 10-year useful life, that doesn't mean you wake up on the first day of day 11 and get rid of it. I mean, I'm driving a 2005 Saturn, and probably a lot of people would have gotten rid of it before then. But you try and get more out of it, and yet still there's a point where you need to replace. So we've been diligent, I think, in recent years in terms of trying to get the most useful life out of the vehicles and equipment that we do have.
Talking about the finances of the city here with Administrator Steve Barg, did this pain or anything have to do with the resignation of the finance director, or?
Well, you know, it's, you mean going back previously?
Well, or we have an opening at this point, don't we?
We do, and you know, Ron Allman, this is a good segue because he was so instrumental in getting us to a better place. He actually discovered some of the things we're talking about with the TIF transfer issue, worked with our financial advisor, Ehlers, and our auditor, and got the ship righted, along with the council. The council did some great things following the advice that they had. But now Ron has found a new job. He's resigned. After 3.5 years, he started in June of 2018, and he'll be leaving here shortly. And we wish him well. You know, you always hate to leave good people, but good people sometimes move on, don't they? So in the meantime, Jennifer Selensky, our recommendation is that she be elevated to the acting finance director. She just started here a couple months ago, coming from Colorado Springs. But we're hopeful that they'll approve that so that she's in charge for the next couple of months while we look for a permanent replacement.
So how does that process go?
Well, I mean, it goes with, again, with hopefully naming somebody to be able to handle the baseline duties, as I always call it, of the finance director for probably 2 to maybe 3 months. Who knows how long it'll take. But we'll likely be going out. This is a department head position. This is a major job at City Hall. So we'll likely be going through a thoughtful process, an internal, external recruitment. We may or may not use a recruitment firm, but you'll be seeing us look far and wide for candidates for our next finance director.
That was my question, because either you take the time and your people to post and do the interviews and do things, or you subcontract and let other people try to find people that have the right amount of experience in what you need to do this. So you either take the time yourself and to take the pain, or give them the money and take the gain, I guess.
Well, yeah, and we're going through this with the police chief right now. We're contracting with a firm called McGrath from Northern Illinois to lead that charge. And the fire chief, which we may talk about in a minute, he has submitted his resignation, and they'll be needing to replace him too. So Jennifer Rakew, our HR director, is very good. She's highly qualified to do this work, but oftentimes it's good to find a firm that has done it as a regular course of business. They have contacts well beyond the city that they might be able to know of candidates who are interested in positions elsewhere. And so you always look at them too to see if it's a better idea.
Now, when you came here, you know, amongst this city administration type of work that you do, is there a trade paper or a classifieds, or is there a website or Facebook page or whatever that people who are city employees look at?
Yeah, well, back in the day, that goes back to 2011, actually 2010 when I was looking. I just found out through the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. That's the association to which the city belongs, and they always post updated job openings. But there's a lot more than that if you're being aggressive and looking. People advertise all over now, from Indeed to you name all the different websites and publications that are out there. And, I think it's a good way to get more candidates. I think you want to consider more candidates. I came from Ripon. I wouldn't have known about it otherwise. I would have never known there was an opportunity here in Marshfield. So I think we'll be looking for a finance director in the state of Wisconsin and beyond, because who knows who might not be interested in coming to Marshfield, and this might be a good fit for. And, whether we use a firm or not, I think we'll be trying to get as much publicity for this as we can.
Is there an oversight? Do you have EEO or EOE to meet with these positions?
We always have to follow whatever federal and state laws there are, to be an equal opportunity employer. And we do, again, going back to Jennifer Raku, our HR director, she can advise us on these areas. And certainly a recruiting firm knows what the requirements are we need to meet. So, in some sense, it's sad. Well, it is sad to lose Ron. I shouldn't say in some sense, but again, it's always exciting to see if there's somebody who feels led to come here that has qualifications and skills that can help us.
Then what you know or what you don't know in a coworker, I guess. I don't know. It's tough because at times you get comfortable with certain things, and some people come in and say, I've got a better way, and you go, well, we don't need a better way. We just want you to drive the car here the way we were going with this, so.
Well, yeah, and we had a longtime finance director by the name of Keith Stry who left in early 2018. And, you think, oh, gosh, we're losing all that experience and knowledge. And then Ron Ullman came along, and he came to us from Marshfield Clinic, actually. And he had a new set of eyes, a new way of looking at things. It helped us immensely. Not just the TIF transfers that we corrected, but some other things that he found and ways we could do better. And it would take me the rest of this program to name them, actually. So, even though he's leaving and we're sorry to see him go, he came at a time when we needed him. It worked out really well. He's looking for new challenges and opportunities now. And I'm sure we'll find somebody else good.
Talking with Steve Barg here, as city administrator, about the finance director position that is open with the city. How long do you anticipate before you want to have somebody rounded up that you can at least make final interviews?
We haven't even started the search process quite yet. It's all fresh at this point. Usually we will look for applicants through the formal process, maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, and get their resumes and letters of interest and other documents that they send us. And then you go through the interview process and all that. I would suspect that we'll probably have somebody on board, in February would be my best guess. But that's just kind of a shot in the dark at the moment.
We have, as you just mentioned here, you brought it up, so I'll go back to fire chief. We're going to be looking for one of those in the process here coming soon.
Yeah, Scott Owen, who's done a wonderful job in the fire department coming up the ranks, but he's decided to resign effective the end of the year. I'm not sure what his last working day is offhand, but as we turn the page to 2022, he won't be around anymore. I suspect that Pete Fletty will be named again as the interim. He was the interim once before when Scott was out on medical leave. But they'll face the same thing. The Police and Fire Commission, think about what they've been through for the last couple of years, and here they are again. They're still working on the police chief recruitment process, and they're going to be hit with the need to decide how to move forward with the fire chief. But I suspect they might look at the same kind of discussion. Do you want to have a search firm help you, or do you want to do it internally? And probably some of the same conversations that we went through earlier this year with the police chief recruitment.
Is that committee settled, Police and Fire Commission? I mean, there was some openings on that, too, as well. Is that done now?
No, it's not, actually. We're still looking for one person to replace Gordy Earl. I think we had an individual who was put up for appointment by Nick Paschal and was not approved. There's another one out there now that, I understand there might even be a conflict of interest as to whether that person could serve. So we are still looking to fill that position. And, boy, all of our committees and boards and commissions are important, Jeff, but the Police and Fire Commission is especially important when you think of what they deal with, not just what they've been through the last couple of years, but even after the police chief and the fire chief are appointed in 2022, there's always going to be important things that they deal with. So that's an important group. We need to always keep quality people on it.
Yeah, before we can get the people in that they're hiring, we need to get them in place.
I know. It's crazy. And in this city, unlike a lot of cities, the Police and Fire Commission has a lot of authority. In some cities, it's more advisory, but we have what's called optional powers, and there's a lot more actual power and authority vested in that group So it's a critical position.
We found that out when the police chief situation unwound there, that they started quoting statutes. You can't do that. You have to do it this way because you're set up as this type of government. And most people are going, well, it doesn't give us the anonymity to do. No, that's because we made this decision years ago that this is the way we were going to do this, and now you have to live by those rules. And we wound up paying the chief money for a long period of time, what some people would say, months probably, you know, at a full salary, when they said, well, can't you just cut them off right now? No, we can't do that.
Yeah, and there was a lot of frustration with the commission at that time because people wanted them to act. And we told them over and over, their hands were tied. You are going to be the jury someday if this goes to a hearing. So you cannot be involved in trying to take actions now. You can't. You have to sit idly by, even though you're the oversight group, idly by, because we're expecting a day when it's going to be in front of you. You can't have been part of these other discussions. You have to decide at that point, kind of like in a criminal case, so to speak, whether this person continues or does not continue as your police chief. So they got a lot of criticism back then that was undeserved, and it was hard on them to have to endure that, I think.
Talking with Steve Barg, he's the city administrator here, the chief of the city hall, so to speak. And so you can talk to him too, 384-2192. We're live on WDLB radio this first Friday of the month of November.
Merry Christmas!
What's your favorite part of the parade?
I like the candy. I like the candy.
WDLB's Inside program. On Fridays, we have guests here from the first Friday would be the mayor, the second Friday, the police chief, third Friday would be county board chairman Lance Plimmel, and on the fourth Friday, we would do Wood County Sheriff Sean Becker, who brought in Marathon County Sheriff Scott Parks last week with him and had an opportunity to visit with. I told him, I said, no, I can't claim you're out of jurisdiction now. Otherwise, I'd stand across the street and thumb my nose at you here in Wood County, but now he's here, so he's got me on the other side of the road, too.
Funny how things work.
Yeah, it's just being divided amongst two counties. I don't know it's that unusual, but does it provide any challenges?
Oh, it does, including the tax bills, certainly. And strangely enough, I don't know if you know this, Appleton is in 3 counties. So the city of Appleton, I think Outagamie me as one, I'm forgetting the others. That does pose some concerns and challenges from time to time. But I think Marathon County and Wood County, at least the people who need to work together, seem to have a good relationship. Police, fire, those kind of folks. So it's okay.
Going back to, we were talking budget, and you said tax rates and the challenges it proposes. How are we doing on that? You mentioned we're between, probably even with Stevens Point and a little below Wisconsin Rapids. Now, are we going to have another increase this year? Yeah,
and what I was talking about is with the 2.5% increase. And I may have said this the last time we were together, Jeff. I'm a taxpayer like everybody else here on the council and city employees mostly. I don't like tax increases any more than anybody else, but in paring down the budget, and I cut out a lot of things. Getting to 2.5% was, I think, about as good as we could do, and I'm hopeful that the public will accept that. It's look at inflation right now; it's about 5%, and our costs go up like everybody else's. Salaries go up. Council's committed to trying to keep up on that, but then supplies, equipment, heating, gasoline, it all increases. So, but 2.5% is, certainly less than last year, and I hope people understand that. And that would bring us to $10.51 per thousand of value. Stevens Point is going to be $10.46, I understand, so almost a tie. And then Wisconsin Rapids is over 11, so they're higher than both of us. So again, it's not like we want to cheer because we're a lower tax rate than Wisconsin Rapids. That's not the point. But I think you're going to see us leveling off and being, inflation or hopefully less than that when we can going forward.
Gasoline prices going higher, natural gas, big jump in. How do you do that? I mean, in my personal budget, I'm thinking, well, I guess I'll just have less in the old account there. I don't know. What does my savings account take a hit? Or I usually drop a little into retirement. Do I pull back on that? I mean, where do I go?
It's hard, and we've had to dip into reserves some of those years when the prices go up. The accounting principle is you estimate high on expenses and low on revenues to give yourself a buffer. So, I don't know what we exactly used for the cost of fuel and heating, for next year. That's usually more the finance director working with department heads. But, I'm sure we gave ourselves a little buffer. But the rate of inflation right now is increasing to the point where, I don't know if we gave ourselves enough of a buffer to cover those costs. We may have to dip into reserves to account for that.
Do you pay cash for utilities, even though the Marshfield Utilities may be a city entity?
Well, yeah, we do pay them for the service, and there's been talk before about how some of this stuff works because we get benefit from them. They obviously get benefit from us. Is there a way we can work it out without transferring cash all the time back and forth? But they are inherently part of us. We don't talk about that a lot. They're under the city umbrella, but we do get bills from them the same way as anybody else does.
It would be simpler just to trade cash. That way it's all up and above board, and you can keep the pencil on the paper and see what's happening rather than trying to barter this or discount that.
Yeah, I think more the bartering and discounting comes with other kinds of services outside of the use of energy. In other words, we help them. They'll be out there doing a water main repair. Maybe we can help them in some way with our street crew or something, and vice versa, rather than charging everybody for every nickel and dime. That's the kind of thing you can do. But no, we're paying for utility costs the same way as anybody else does.
I don't mean to bushwhack you here, but I saw an article yesterday that we have lead in the water.
You saw something I did not, so I'm glad I came out to the station today. In a troubling amount, I guess I have not seen the report.
I didn't say parts per million and give me the math on what's good and what's bad. It's just that lead was found in our water, but that's one of those things that is usually on an individual basis. That comes from the main to the house and those kind of things. Even though we look to the city to help us, a lot of times it's within our own realm that we're having to do the repairs here.
Yeah, and Marshfield Utility has been working really hard to try and replace those laterals coming from the main to the homes as part of the projects that they do. And apparently there is some grant and loan money out there to try and offset those costs for the homeowner, because especially when we're doing work in their area, it's a good time to get a service that's not going to be problematic that way. I'll be interested in seeing the report that you're talking about. I'm actually seeing Nick Cum, the manager of Marshfield Utilities, later today, so maybe I'll find out more.
Don't bring my name up, please.
I won't. I promise. I promise. And I'm
Leave
sure
me out of that conversation.
Nick does a great job, as does the utilities staff in general. So I'm sure they're aware of it and on top of it. But yeah, I'm glad I learned something today.
Well, let me know if there's a news story there, will you?
Will do, Jeff. Will do.
Yeah, right. We'll be right on it. We'll be the first you tell, right? Talking with City Administrator Steve Barg here on this first Friday of November. If you're listening live here on WDLB, you could be watching on MFLD TV, the Marshfield television, as they have their city channel, $9.89 on your Spectrum digital tier, or it could be through their many outlets, including through the city's homepage on the web, or through their YouTube, or through their Facebook page as well. You can find us, as these are videoed as well, so you can go back and see us as we're visiting here or listen, you can call in right now, I guess is the point I was bringing up, 384-2192, 384-2192. Now, is there a public hearing on this tax increase? Do I get a chance to tell you my thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, it looks like we're actually moving the public hearing date, and I could explain why, but to Monday the 29th of November, and that'll be the day after Thanksgiving weekend at 5:30, and that'll be your chance to come and voice concerns. And again, like I always say, it doesn't have to be where you have the answer figured out. I think a lot of people think, Jeff, if I say that we should, spend more money on the park across the street for me, I better have an answer at the podium for what they're going to cut. You don't have to paint a full picture. Just tell us what you're thinking about our taxing and spending and what you've seen in the budget.
Where do I get that information? I mean, did you send me anything?
No, it's online, and it's out there available on the city's website for people to peruse. And if they contact us, we can make if they don't have internet, we can make other arrangements to get that to them. But that's the best place to find it right now.
Well, and you know how it is. Everybody has their concern. Unless there's something for me to come out with pitchforks and tiki torches about, I don't find anything that gets me riled. It's just a lot of numbers there. I'm not sure if you're doing good or bad, depending upon. I don't like an increase any more than the next guy, but I realize that, as you said, the cost of living is going up here and cost of doing business.
Yeah, the biggest concern we get is simply the tax rate. And we'll probably hear a few people say 2.5% increase. You had an increase last year, and now another one this year, and I'm on a fixed income, or I'm not getting a raise from my employer, and I don't ever minimize that. I just don't. But you did make a good point a minute ago that the costs of everything are going up, and government has the same cost to pay as homeowners.
Yeah, I wish you had some
magic.
Well, they call it wholesale and retail.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you wish you had a wholesaler you could get stuff from that didn't necessarily charge retail rates for everything, but a lot of times you have to shop the same stores we do to get the things that we do.
Yeah, no, very true. And we don't have to pay sales tax, as a government entity. That's good. So we pay a little bit less than other people do for goods and services. But otherwise, the increases fall on us, too.
So the 29th.
Yep, Monday the 29th at 5:30. We're finalizing that right now. We're made a change, and it's because of something that Ron Allman, who will be leaving here as finance director shortly, found that we can do in terms of a last-minute modification of the budget, but it will not affect the tax rate. It is slightly backing up the process while we, repost and do another hearing notice. So.
One of the things that I had heard about through the news here on WDLB too was taxi rate. You talk about increases. Where did that stand with the council? The
council did approve at the last meeting to go up 15 cents per ride for those who are seniors or have disabilities, taking it from $2.85 to $3. It's the first increase in 4 years. And same thing, if you're on a fixed income, you don't care if it's the first increase in 20 years, probably. It's not in your budget. But we feel, given the costs are rising and the fact that the city picks up a portion of this, that trying to get to $3 at least is a good thing. It'll be easier on the drivers, too, for the purposes of making change to be at a flat 3. So that'll take effect January 1st. The rate will remain $5 a ride for the regular fares.
How long does this, before you can change it again, how long is this in effect?
Well, we could theoretically change it anytime, I think, during the year, but, you're not going to see us for at least a year, maybe longer, change that. What we monitor is how much of the cost of the service falls on the city. And maybe I mentioned this last time, Jeff, but about 55% of the cost of the taxi service is paid for by federal and state grants. 35% or a little bit more is covered by fares that are paid to the cab service. And there's always that small percentage, 5% or whatever it turns out to be, that the city bears. And the council's been very supportive of that. I mean, it's a big thing for our citizens to be able to get to medical appointments and groceries and stuff like that. But we want to keep up on the fares, because if one day I walk in and say to the council, you're picking up a greater share, next year your share is going to be 10% or 20%, they have to fit that into the budget. And as much as they want to support people who need taxi rides, it falls into the same category where it's competing with street improvements and park improvements and other services. So we want to keep that local share, as we call it, as low as possible.
Now, that program in Marshfield, the shared ride service we use for taxi here, is owned by a subcontractor by the name of Running Incorporated. How long is your contract with them, and when do they change prices? Is that where the price increase is coming, is to them?
Well, we consult them on the price increases, because it really is offsetting ultimately our local share more than anything. This will be the 4th year out of 5 with them in 2022 So we'll be wrapping up this contract with them at the end of 2023. So you'll see us looking ahead 12 to 18 months. You'll see us talking about another RFP, request for proposals, to all taxi companies out there. We usually get maybe 3 or 4 to respond across Wisconsin, and maybe we'll end up with somebody else. We've had pretty good success with running. They're very receptive to complaints and concerns.
How often can they change rates? Is what I guess what I'm getting to.
Well, they can't change rates without our blessing. So it would be them coming to us and saying, "City, our costs are going up, and you're gonna feel it too. We need to go from $3 to $3.25." But they can't independently just send us a letter someday and say rates are going up. It's got to be approved at the local level because of our agreement that really puts us in the center of this relationship between the federal and state government and the provider.
Talking with Steve Barg, City Administrator, here on today's Inside program, this first Friday in the month of November. You can too, 384-2192, 384-2192. We talked about the police and fire chief. We're looking for both of those. One of the things that was, how would I say, a issue they brought up, and probably rightly so, is the hours at City Hall. You implemented different hours. Has that been pretty smooth?
We're not getting complaints, at least that I hear of. Sometimes I sit in my office in my own little world and I don't know what goes on, but I'm not hearing from our staff that we're getting complaints. I'm not really hearing from council that we're getting complaints. Having said that, we've had a couple of people at the podium at meetings saying that they don't think this is a good deal for our citizens. They feel it's not providing the service that they would expect. And that's why we actually had to bring it back to the council in part. Maybe I mentioned this last time, but when the council adopted this on September 14th, it was not really an agenda item. The agenda item was Steve to give a report on the August trial period, and the action line said none, for information only. During the conversation, a couple of council members said, I think this is good. It's good for the citizens. It's good for the employees. The citizens seem to be okay with it. You can do all your business online now if you want to. Let's make it all year round. And so then after that, there was a citizen who wrote to me and called me and said, Steve, I don't like this. I don't agree with it. And under what guise did the city officials vote on this the other night? I looked at the agenda. This is the other person talking. She said, I looked at the agenda, and it wasn't even called out. It just said you were going to report on the trial period. It didn't say you were considering year-round. The recommended action was for information only. How could I have known that you were going to take this action that night? And the city attorney agreed. He said, the council didn't do anything unlawful, but it would be good to bring it back and discuss it again publicly and give people a chance to comment.
Can you rescind a vote?
Yeah, they could have turned it around. They could have overturned it. In fact, they were discussing it almost fresh that night. And the vote was similar to the first time, though, 8-2 in favor of continuing the closure as of noon on Fridays to the public. They did respect, I think, the individual who spoke at the podium. She was fairly on point in terms of her concerns. But they still feel that it's a good thing for the city to do this. It's a good thing for the employees, a benefit for them as well, since Friday afternoons are typically slow. Sometimes we can't afford to give the raises we'd like, so this is something, it's a no-cost benefit per se. I know not everybody would agree with that, but that's, factually correct, I think. And again, unless we start getting complaints and concerns brought to us, we're likely to go on with it. Now, there'll still be elections. There'll still be issues maybe with tax payments that we'll have to deal with. And we're certainly available when people have a special concern where they can only meet us on Friday afternoon. We'll make it work. We'll make it work, Jeff. But I think it seems to be going fairly smooth at this point.
Well, when the discussion happens among citizens in that bastion of politics, the local tavern,
yeah,
people are talking about, well, what the heck, the city's just cutting it, hours, and so now what, the employees all get an extra time off, where all those hours they're working less, so they just got a raise? Is that basically what happened?
No, it's not. They didn't get a raise. They have to work 40 hours anyway. What they've done is many of them are there after 4:30. They've worked out schedules with their supervisors to make sure that they're working 40 hours in the week. And when I go back, I'll be back at work afternoon today. I work Friday afternoon all the time anyway. I'll see, certainly a number of employees there who've decided they don't want to do the special schedule. They still want to take their regular hour lunch and work 7:30 to 4:30 with an hour for lunch, and then work all day Friday as well. Everyone's required to work at least 40 hours.
Is there salaried positions or punch a clock down there?
Well, we have both. We have the department heads are typically salaried, and some other people who fit into the category to be exempt. And many of the employees are hourly. And again, everybody has to talk to their supervisor and say, okay, look, here's the deal. Here's how I want to do it. Can I work from 7 to 5 with an hour lunch and then work? Oh, that's great. That's fine. What if I wanted to work from 7:30 to 5:30 and do this? So, I mean, there's some flexibility there, which the employees really like. Pretty much everybody has their own paperwork and things they need to do anyway, apart from when the building is open. So work goes right on.
Yeah, as we used to say here, as long as the work gets done.
Yeah, it is, and there's no indication that it's not from everything I can see and hear from department heads. And people do appreciate the flexibility. Some people have daycare issues that make them certain hours work better for them. And some people like, are fine eating at work while they do their, lunchtime while they're working. Others want to get out of the building. There's opportunities for everyone.
That's how that tuna salad stain got on that paper. Having lunch at your desk again, are you, Marge?
Yep, my form looks kind of bad here at this point. Yeah, you got it.
Talking with Steve Barg, you can too. 384-2192, City Administrator, here on today's Inside program, live on WDLB this first Friday in November.
Merry Christmas.
What's your favorite part of the parade?
I like the floats. I like the candy.
WDLB's Inside program here for the first Friday in November. You know that if you're listening live, you may be watching us on Marshfield TV, MFLD TV, and that could be through the internet. It could be on Spectrum Channel 989. The city is attempting to get all their information out as many ways as you can, and when it was just WDLB back in the day, it was easy. You just go to us or to the newspaper, and that was all there was. Now you've got 14 different ways that information is consumed, and you can't get to all of them. And whether you're doing a soup supper or whether you're doing city business, it seems like today is so complicated.
Yeah, and I got to give some kudos to Tom Laux, our communications director. He has done an amazing job. In fact, right now he's kind of running that department by himself because we had a resignation in that area as well. And he through all the platforms he maintains, we get the word out to as many people as we can. We know not everybody has Facebook, not everybody has, anything in particular for where you get their news, but we're trying everywhere we can to reach people.
Well, I'm glad you're here, and you still see us as a viable opportunity for people to interact.
Absolutely, and I hear all the time people comment on programs and the news that you do regularly, just in general, on City Hall, and we're grateful.
This news cycle, I guess we had, and over the past couple of times we've talked with you on the weekend here, and the shows that we do a little 12-minute visit every week or so with Steve on the program that runs on Saturday and Sunday morning. The situation with the Marshfield Clinic, we were kind of in an adversarial situation the way we left it. Where do we stand on that now?
Yeah, that's right. 5 weeks sounds like a long time ago. I think that's when we were last physically together in this room. Well, good things have happened. I can tell you, first of all, the Skywalk lease was approved during the month of October by the council, and that's good. If you drive down Oak Avenue in that part of the medical campus, you'll see that they're working on making that connection overhead between the East Wing and the hospital. that was a big deal. I mean, the clinic really wanted to get that going. In fact, they had a deadline, I think, with their contractor to start at a certain point this year, or they were going to face penalties and problems there too. So that's been worked out. The bigger issue is still kind of out there, and that is they're asking to be removed from the tax roll for both the East Wing and the main clinic building, claiming the hospital exemption that they are effectively a hospital use. The city doesn't agree with them, but we're becoming much more amiable, I think, and talking with each other. I don't know where that's going to go. There's been suggestions about a pilot payment where they would make a payment in lieu of taxes if they were taken off the tax roll. But at this point, I think everything is premature along that line. The good news, Jeff, is we're having regular conversations. I met with the chief administrative officer on Tuesday of this week. We talked about a lot of intentional ways we can get more conversation between city leaders and officials from the clinic on a regular basis. And I think that'll help us with long-term planning. So I want the public to know that there are good things under the surface, even if they continue to hear stories about an unresolved tax issue.
So it's ongoing, and the lines are open, and everybody's still talking about it, and it's not a standoff. I mean, people were worried because it's a big entity. I mean, that's what we're known for here. Yeah,
and it really is. We want to see the clinic grow here. They're talking about spending hundreds of millions of dollars of improvements. And they took us on a tour back in September, and they showed us, Jeff, all the things that they want to do in the hospital that need to be updated from the days when Ascension had it. And in the East Wing, the improvements they're looking at making to make that a first-rate facility, or better than it is now. It's already a good facility, but they've got a lot of hopes, but we want to keep them here, growing here. And yet the city has concerns about its finances. Certainly, if we lost the tax revenue from those two properties, it would be concerning to say the least. So there's a lot on the line. The root issue is nowhere near solved in terms of whether or not they deserve tax-exempt status for those properties. But at least the conversation it's friendly, it's positive, and people are talking about the future together, sitting in a room shaking hands. That's a good thing.
Well, there are other growing things that are happening around the community, including we talked a few times about the Daniels addition out on the west side of town. Anything new on that?
Yeah, we still, we're nearing the completion of all the infrastructure. They'd hoped to be done by November 1st. It looks like it's going to take another week or so, but the weather is cooperating, which is great. But by November 15th or so, all the sewer, water, street, everything should be in there, all good to go. We've pre-sold, I think we've said this before, still at roughly 2/3 of the lots. But as soon as we get to the point of completing the infrastructure, we can then begin selling the lots for real. And, like I said, 23 lots, 2/3 of them sold already, roughly. We're going to start seeing some home construction in 2022. And I don't think it'll be long before the remaining lots find buyers. There's a demand out there, a big demand.
Who are you selling to, contractors or individuals?
Yes. Yeah, we've been approached by individuals, and then we've also been approached by builders who are looking at building for other people. So we're dealing with both of those groups.
Talking with Steve Barg, City Administrator, here on today's Insight program, this first Friday of the month of November. So the campus at UWSP here in Marshfield, is there an update? Is there something happening there that we should know about?
Well, we had some discussion about having regular updates from them a while back. The campus has had some struggles. All the university schools have had some financial challenges and some enrollment challenges. Really, the enrollment at the main campus in Stevens Point and Wausau and Marshfield is all down, I think, across the board. In fact, I heard once not too long ago that only the university location in Madison itself is really not seeing some reductions in terms of enrollment. But they shared with us how it's declined in the last 3 years. They put up a chart that showed what they're facing. But they talked a lot about the things that they're doing to try and turn that around a bit. New course offerings, new majors, an MBA focus that they're trying to start working people down that road. And just trying to respond to the needs that they're hearing in terms of the kind of schooling that people want for business and other professions, and trying to adapt that into their curriculum. So, the challenges are there. They're large, but they're working on them to try and make headway.
Forgive me if it sounds blunt, but why does the city care? That's their business. Is it going to affect our tax rate? Are they asking for a cut or?
No, but the city and the county are co-owners of the building and facilities that they're on, and I think we have a pretty good stake, even apart from tax revenue, at the success of our our campus. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever tried to quantify, Jeff, the value in terms of the goods and services purchased in town by students and faculty and others. What it might mean to home prices if, in fact, people who are teachers working here at the college or other people who are employed there, left because they didn't have jobs. It's important to us for a lot of reasons. In fact, they have a lot of cultural events there, too, that people enjoy for the whole community. So it's a vibrant part of our city. And it's at the point now where the enrollment is dropped and people are concerned, and we want to do anything we can to help them as they try to make inroads in terms of moving up. And like I said, there's good people over there. Marty Loy and Michelle Bornke gave the presentation, and they shared some good things that are happening, but it's a challenge right now.
So they're just keeping you, the city people, involved or informed, I should say, about what the trends are there. So you don't hear it on the street, as we say. That's
a big part of it. They also do get funding from the city and the county. I didn't mention that. They get about $50,000 a year from both the city and the county in just operating funds to help keep up the properties, and then we participate in capital improvements. We don't, per se, pay for the teachers and all that stuff. What we pay for is the maintenance needs of the building, because it's ours. And there's a good argument to be made. If a building on campus needs to be re-roofed, well, if we don't do it, who loses? We do. If someday there's not a campus there, we're left with buildings that are falling down. So we are like a landlord of sorts, and that's why we participate financially. So they want us to know what's going on, and they come to see us once or twice a year to give us updates.
Talking with City Administrator Steve Barg here on this first Friday in November on WDLB's Insight program. He avails himself to your questions and comments in the public here and in front of everyone. If you don't get a chance to get to the council meetings, or if you don't call him at his office, you can ask the same question here that probably a lot of other people are thinking as well. I try to bring those up as best I can here on the program, but I enjoy having you here. I appreciate very much that you come in and share with us what's going on.
I'm very glad to be here, Jeff. I really enjoy talking with you and connecting with the community this way. And like I said, WDLB is a good news source that I hear people, commenting on things they've heard on your station all the time. And we definitely want to be using you to help inform people.
Well, you can get 2 shiny Buick hubcaps if that's what you're hearing. And I know where you can get those.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah, absolutely. But you're a good news source. You really are.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you again soon, I hope.
Sounds good, Jeff.
Here on today's Inside program on WDLB, coming to you live on the radio or on MFLD TV, Marshfield Community Type Television here. Then you can see that through the city's website. Connect to it through their YouTube page or their Facebook page, either way, or on Channel 989 on your digital tier on Spectrum.